Hey guys, it's Keith Baker from Dusty Attic Studio, and we are doing another installment of the Studio One Quick Tips, and today is a big one. This is probably the most asked question in the forums and in the Facebook groups, and it's about latency. And also, why do I have pops and clicks and cracks in my headphones or in my monitors, whatever the case may be? And why am I having such nasty CPU spikes? Well, I'm going to go over a couple of things here. There's a couple of ways to fix this. Depending on what version of Studio One that you have. So I'm going to start with the older versions of Studio One, like version 2. When you are recording, let me pull Studio One up here. These are just some sample tracks, so don't worry about those. When you're recording, you're going to need to go in and change your block size. So I'm going to open up my universal control. This just happens to be what I'm using right now with my AudioBox 1818 VSL and my USB 96. If you're using, let's say the Apollo or a Focusrite interface, you're going to have something similar to this. They pretty much all going to give you the same information. Sample rate and block size, etc. But when you are recording, you want to have your block size set at a lower rate, or a lower size, probably somewhere in the 128 to 256 range is gonna give you low latency. For those of you who not really understand what low latency is, or latency in general, when you're on a microphone like something like this, and then you're going into your interface, then it's going into your computer, into Studio One, processing, coming back out into your interface, and then out to your monitors or your headphones, whatever you're referencing on. That's a long way to travel. So when it makes that round trip, if you have this block size set too high, it's gonna give you latency. It's gonna take it longer for it to travel all the way through the system and back into your headphones. So whenever you're recording at set at low block size. Now, when you're mixing and you're done doing all your recordings and you're just going to go to mixing, you're going to go to your highest level. What this is going to do is take the strain off your CPU and allow you to process your tracks. If you try to go in at this level, you're going to find that you're going to have latency. You're going to be, whatever you're playing back, versus what you're going into a microphone. For instance, if you're doing vocals, you're going to sing and you're going to hear a delay coming back into your headphones. That's latency. You're going to get that with this high block size. If you're just mixing a song, just leave it at the highest block size. This one just happens to be 4096. Some are only 2048. If you're on some of the older systems, or older interfaces, you might only be getting a maximum of 1024. So, recording, low. Mixing, high. Now, when you are at low block size, let's just pick 128 for instance, and once you're recording a couple of tracks, you're probably not going to have any CPU issues. Here I'm only running at 5%. But when you start getting more and more tracks, that's when you're going to start running into issues where you're going to hear pops and cracks and things like that. You don't have to worry about those. They're more annoying than anything. They're not actually printing to the track, so you don't really have to worry about it, except it's like I said, it's just annoying. So when you're recording multiple tracks, I really suggest at low block levels, to get that low latency, that you hold off on putting any treatment on your tracks until you are done recording and going into your mixing process. Anytime you start loading things up, especially if you put on reverb in your sends, reverbs are a CPU hog, and if you start putting a lot of instances of reverb, that's just going to cause your CPU to work harder at low block sizes. But if you are done recording, then go ahead and take it up to your maximum block size. And then even on the older systems, if you're running at a high block size, when I say older systems, I'm talking about maybe, excuse me, I'm talking about like old dual cores, like 2.4s, 2.6s, things like that. I mean, the system that I'm running now is very modest. It's like a 4th gen quad core, Intel quad core, 3.10. I only have 8 gigs of RAM, and I'm still running on regular hard drives, 7200 hard drives. So it's nothing special, but I can get away with tracking at a little bit higher block sizes without running into too much latency. I can actually even go as high as 512, and you can hear it. It's annoying, but it's not so much of a delay that you can't perform. A lot of singers, for instance, they won't like it like that. They're like, "Oh, why does it sound funny?" Well, I'll hide it by throwing some delay and maybe some reverb on it, and just say, "Oh, it's just the effects I have on here. I'll fix it later." But anyway, so low numbers to record, high numbers to mix. When you're tracking at low block sizes, hold off on doing treatments until you go into the mixing process. All right, so that's how you do it on the older systems. Now on Studio One V3.5.1, they've got this whole new cool thing going on here, and I'm going to go over it as best as I can, as slowly as I can. I mean, it took me several months to really understand how all this stuff works. It's actually, if you take it down to on how the program's written to make this work, it's very complicated. But if you just follow these few simple steps, it's gonna really help you out here. So again, we're going to open up our controller. Excuse me. And I'm going to go, and I set the block size all the way down to 64. Okay. So that gives me very low latency. But problem with that is when you start stacking up the tracks, again, you'll start running into it running a lot of, taking up a lot of your resources. So what the engineers at Presonus has done is they've kind of given you the best of both worlds. If you go up to Studio One, you go to Options, you go to your audio setup, and then go to Processing, and you're going to see your Dropout Protection. I have it set at maximum right now. I'm not changing any of these settings as I'm doing this video, because when I do, it knocks out my vocal mic with my OBS software. So that's why I'm not making any changes. But you can set your block size at 64 on my particular system. you have to do you have to just try to do a little testing to see what works best with your system. So I set mine at 64. I set my dropout protection at maximum, which puts it at 2048. Well, when you're recording, it thinks you're at 64 for low latency, but it also thinks that it's at 2048, like if you were for mixing, for instance. For the lack of better layman words, that's kind of how it happens. Because you can see right here, with 64 set at maximum, my latency, my round trip audio is only 6.35 milliseconds. That's pretty good. I mean, if you get a i7 system, 32 gigs of RAM, and you got the fastest computer on the planet, I mean, this could be down to 2.0 milliseconds, which is just crazy. If I was to go take this and change this to 4096 here, this would turn off automatically, and then I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't be able to utilize the dropout protection. But that these low latency shuts off, and then you have that delay when you speak into a mic and how long it takes it to get back to your headphones, for instance. We're talking about, in this case, it says round trip without this low latency system, implemented. We're talking about 143 milliseconds. Well, you can start to hear latency at, let's say, around 10 milliseconds. So that's way bad. I mean, that's like an echo. Hello. It's that bad. So but utilizing this way, you can keep it at 64. Set this to maximum, and then you have your low latency. Let me shut this down here, close this. Now, you're going to have to come here when you create a new song and you set up your dropout protection like I just showed you. Default, this is turned off. I'm not going to turn it off because I could lose my microphone here for this video, but it's usually, you can still see the Z, but it's not green. So you're going to have to turn that on. I mean, if you don't turn it on, you're going to hear latency. You turn it on, all of a sudden all the latency is gone as long as you have your block size set low and your dropout set at maximum. Same thing goes with your instruments. You can have latency with your instruments. I don't have anything here. As a matter of fact, these tracks here are just sample tracks. You have your Z up here. That is typically, once you set your dropout on the instrument, default typically comes green on this. Here you have to turn it on. Here you don't have to turn it on. But if you're going to be running instruments, if you open it up and that's not turned on, then you should turn it, press it, just click it and it turns green, or click it and it turns off. So that is really cool how they did that, because if you got 30 or 40 instrument tracks here, I mean, if you're tracking by yourself and you don't care about having treatment on there for your next instrument, you don't have to put treatment on. You say you get the guitar done. You leave the guitar raw when you go to the next guitar. You leave that one raw. You go to the bass. If you don't care, that's all fine. You can be running at the lower block size if you were doing it the old way. Problem is, when you get 30 or 40 tracks and you got some singer that's coming in, he's going to want to have a decent mix. So that's when you could run into having pops and clicks, because you're going to have all this stuff treated. Compressors, EQs, reverb, delay, whatever the case may be, because the singers are going to want to have that really nice mix so they can put their vocals on. And having it this way, 64 with your dropout at maximum, you really get the best of both worlds. You got low latency and you have all the power you need to mix as you go along. Now, when you're done with everything, So you got all your vocals and everything is completely done. Just go old school. When you have nothing left to do but mix and master, just go ahead and I would go ahead and click this and put it to your maximum block size. That way it's going to ensure you that you don't have any of that annoying noise. That's what I do, at least. You can do what you want, but that's how I handle it. Okay, so that takes care of that part. Now, there's some other things that you can do that's going to help free up your resources. When I say free up your resources, I mean take the heat off your CPU. First thing is optimization. Make sure that you do a complete optimization on your computer. You might want to, if you go into Best Buy or something like that, or Micro Center, and you buy a computer off the shelf, HP, whatever it is, they come loaded with just garbage. You want to go in there and wipe all that stuff out. If it's going to be your DAW computer, then you don't need anything on there but your operating system and your DAW. In this case, Studio One. Uninstall stuff you don't need. If there's certain things you need on there, you can go into your task manager and shut it down. Turn them off if you don't need them. Just give your computer as much breathing room as you can, because Studio One, and any DAW for that matter, I mean, it's doing a lot of stuff. It really is. Your computer really is taking a beating. So if you can eliminate any unnecessary stuff running in the background, just do it. Also, if you laptop people, if you're using laptops, they got built-in wireless LAN integrated. Turn those off when you're working. When you're tracking and when you're mixing. There's either a switch on there somewhere, or some key commands that just disables it. Or you might have to go on Windows. You go into your device manager and you can disable it there. And then when you're done, you can turn it back on. For Mac, I don't know. I'm sure it's something similar. I just don't know what it's called because I don't use a Mac. Also, if you're using a desktop computer, a lot of people like to use those little USB wireless LANs where you just plug it into your USB and then it grabs your Wi-Fi in the house. If you have one of those, when you're using Studio One, simply just unplug it. The reason why is because typically these wireless devices, they share buses with the USB. I mean, USB is a universal serial bus, so they share a bus, in a lot of occasions. So you might be sharing a bus with your wireless that your interface might be hooked up on. So now it's got two devices going through a single bus, and then you're going to have issues there too. So if you follow all the steps that I talked about here, even if you have old systems, and even with the early versions of Studio One, this should get you by. If you're still having trouble, it may be time to upgrade to a faster computer. It's as simple as that. I mean, if you're running a really slow dual core with no memory and a 5400 RPM hard drive, you just might not be able to run Studio One at its peak. It's just there's reason why they have minimal system requirements for something like a DAW, because it just uses so much resources. Let's see, what else is there? I think that pretty much sums it up. Follow these steps and you should be good to go. Oh, I take that back. Sometimes if you hear some clicks when you're recording, double check to make sure that you're not clipping. I mean, not only in Studio One, I mean, you might not have anything clipping up on the screen, but you might hear some clipping at some high, like the singer really blasts out something, and you hear some clicks there. It could be that your interface is clipping. the 1818 VSL, for instance, it has a meter that I can see if the interface is clipping. If you're having interface clipping, simply turn down that channel to that microphone. Just turn it down a couple of notches. I'm sure you're still going to get plenty of signal into a Studio One that's going to give you plenty of headroom to work. So that's something else you might want to check. If all this other fails, unless you need a computer upgrade. Anyway, I'm going to quit it right here. I hope you find this helpful. If you have any questions about this video, and or if you have a video request on something that you're not sure about and you want me to do a video, by all means, down below here on YouTube, write me a message, or you can meet me over at one of the Presonus Studio One Facebook groups. I have one that's called the Studio One Sessions, where we pretty much go over, that's for helping people with mixing and mastering. And then we have the Presonus Studio One Facebook group that is more technical support. We got, between the two groups, we got like 24,000 members. You can log in anytime, day or night, 24 hours a day, and ask a question, and you'll probably get an answer within a couple of minutes. That's really cool. Also, you can reach me by going to my website. That's www.dustyaddictstudio.com. There you can find my email address, or there's a place where you can just type a question there and send it on out to me. And I'll do what I can to help. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. I hope to see you again real soon. Take care.